What's going on, folks? Nate here at Tool Dyno Works. I am back in our dyno room today with our 24 MT-09, and for once, I'm going to actually take some time out of our super busy schedule to cover a new system we've put on this bike. The last several systems we installed weren't really any better or any worse than the others, so they just weren't really worth talking about. However, this one that we've now installed is much better. We've actually got the Toce full system here on our bike from the 3rd generation MT-09s, and this bracket is why. The guys over at Toce didn't actually have one of these, but they knew that the rear sets had changed and their previous mount was not going to work. So they sent us over the 3rd gen system. We fabbed up really just to get the bolt hole spacing and angles correct for them. A pretty simple bracket that we're going to go ahead and send back to them so they can go ahead and make something much prettier to go on their exhaust. But regardless, while it was here, we figured we'd build mapping for it and test it out, see how it worked. And I wouldn't be making this video unless it was significantly better than everything else we've tested. And again, we've covered pretty much every system out there. I've not made videos for several of them because, as I've said previously, I don't have the time. I truly just don't have the time to cover every freaking exhaust system that we buy for these things, or with customers that come on in with their bikes that want tuning with a different exhaust than we already have. There's just not enough hours in the day. But this one is exceptional, because I have not seen anywhere close to 120 horsepower to the tire on one of these bikes yet from the 4th generation MT-09s. And this one does it. Now, for reference, the system that made the most power that we had tested on this bike to date was the SC Project full system with a DNA air filter, which again, we already covered. It's like a 1 horsepower improvement over stock. Whatever. That's not the point. The SC Project system was the gold standard for performance on these bikes. It made just under 118 horsepower, like 117.9 or whatever was, I think, our glory run that we got out of that thing. And this is just shockingly better everywhere. Now, what you're looking at here for reference is the blue line. Run 27 is the way the bike sits right now, the full Toce system and the custom ECU mapping that we've now developed for that system on the bike. Run 7 was the SC Project full system with, again, the matching ECU mapping that we developed. And you can see that with the exception of right at maybe 5,200 RPMs, it's just more power and torque everywhere. Let's just highlight a couple spots here in the graph so I can really drive home what I'm talking about. Right there off the bottom at 4,000 RPMs. This thing's making 3 horsepower more and 4 foot-pounds of torque, again, just right off the bottom. That additional torque and power carries literally everywhere, from 6,000 RPMs almost all the way to the top of the rev limiter at about 10,500 RPMs, and by 11 grand the bikes are finally just, identical with the two systems. But again, that's literally at the limiter. You're never there. You are riding in this range here the entire time you're on these bikes, and this Toce system is just flowing more air. And it's a lot more air. The amount of fuel I've had to add in some spots of the mapping was honestly surprising. Normally, I don't have to add an additional 8% on top of what's already like an additional 20 from the previous system I had on the bike. So there's some areas of the mapping here where I'm knocking on the door of 26, 27, 28% fuel over stock, which is just nuts. But it makes sense if you take a look at how this performs now versus what it was when it was stock. Truly, the graphs don't even look like the same bike anymore. It was making 107 horsepower stock, now it's making almost 120. Used to make 62.5 foot-pounds of torque, now it's making almost 70. The gains are just enormous everywhere, with a whopping, 16 ponies at the very top end of the RPM range? But what surprised me more than even all of that about this system was that I actually had to pull away some of the fuel that I had in place on most of the maps we already had built for other systems on these bikes at light throttle in the cruising area, which means they're actually just more efficient down low, so you get a little bit better fuel economy. It's not going to change your life, but it's a little bit better fuel economy in the areas where you just don't need all the additional fuel, which was great to see. It's more efficient down low, and it flows massively better up high. So hats off to the guys over at Toce for this system, because yeah, it's loud, and it may not look like everybody's cup of tea, but it fucking works. And for a guy like myself that really just cares about performance, that's all that matters to me. Now, that's truly all I've got time for today. I've actually got appointments waiting right outside the room that I've got to get back to, so I'm going to go ahead and have our technicians pull this system off our MT-09, send the bracket that we fabbed up over to the guys at Toce. They should be able to get these added to their website here pretty quickly once they get a much prettier looking version of the bracket that we just mocked up for them on the 4th generation variants for this bike. And then if you guys decide to go ahead and get one of these systems, we can definitely get you properly tuned and dialed in with our mail-in ECU flashing service for the specific setup. And as always, if you have any questions whatsoever, do not hesitate to email us at support@tooldynoworks.com. We are always happy to help, and I can guarantee that you will not find higher quality custom ECU mapping for these 4th gen CP3s anywhere else than right here at Two Wheel Dyno Works.